Welcome to the Pittsburgh Gal Principal Podcast, where women school leaders and teachers come to share their school and classroom stories about teaching, learning, and leading. If you are a woman leader or teacher, I would love to have you on the show and share your story. Please connect with me on Twitter at eclaire_ahs or following my blog at pittsburghgalprincipal.wordpress.com. This is episode 14 of the Pittsburgh Gal Principal. Well, good evening, everybody. Today I have Alina Davis. She is a staffing specialist in a pre-K to 5 building out in Orlando, Florida. We talked a little bit off air, and Alina said it's pretty hot there, and I'm a little bit jealous of that weather. In Pittsburgh, we are always cloudy and rainy and kind of gloomy, so we have these kind of thoughts about what it's probably like in Orlando. But Alina, thank you so much for chatting with me this evening. How are you? What's going on?
I'm great. Yeah, so Florida's hot and sunny. Think of being really wet and sticky, and that's what it feels like right now. The humidity level is really high. But we actually just started back to school in our district today. I'm in a rather large district. We've got about 210,000 students.
Oh my gosh!
So you can imagine the bus transportation. I think there's 9,000 school buses and 23,000 bus stops alone. So
wow. So you don't want to hear that I'm in a district with 1,600 kids total.
That's my son's middle school.
How different. That's funny. So, Alina, I'd like to just open up the conversation with you sharing your background, how you got started in education, all the way up to whatever you want to share that got you to the place that you are today as a staffing specialist. Okay.
So I'm going into my 20th year, which is kind of unbelievable to think of. I feel like I just graduated from college. I went to UCF and I got a degree in early childhood. So my first 6 years I taught kindergarten, which I absolutely loved. Our district, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very large. And so I've taught in several schools. I started, my first 3 schools were kindergarten, and then I taught second grade. I had the pleasure of 8 years working part-time so that my young boy could grow up. And I did that in a leadership role called a ESOL compliance teacher. And that position is where in the state of Florida we have certain laws for our English language learners. And each school has a compliance person that oversees the program. So I did that for 8 years while my youngest who's now 10, was growing up, so that I could work part-time and stay home with him. And during that time, I actually got a newsletter from Florida ASCD looking for board members. And so I thought, sure, I'm working part-time, might as well do that. So I applied, and I was accepted to their board and became very interested in the work that ASCD was doing. And through that, I became involved nationally. I served on the ASCD Leadership Council, and then because of my role as future president and such with my affiliate, I got involved in some other different programs, and someone suggested that I apply for Emerging Leader. And 2010, I became an Emerging Leader, which back in those days, the program was very small, and the outreach was not quite where it is today. So I was very lucky to have the opportunity to get in what I did and grow and learn from so many others. And the reason I go into this is because I'm sitting I'm at these meetings, and I'm sitting with these people that are my age who are superintendents of schools, principals, district leaders, and we're talking about education, and I feel like I'm on the same level playing field as they are. And coming from a large district where you're lucky if you see the superintendent like twice in your career because the school district is so large, that was pretty awesome to be sitting next to these superintendents. So it encouraged me to go back to school and get my specialist degree in educational leadership. So I did that during that 8-year stint part-time. And toward the end of that 8 years, I went back in the classroom and then went full-time teaching first grade and third grade prior to seeking out leadership roles, because my goal is to become an assistant principal in the next year or two. So the the last 2 years, I've been in the staffing specialist role. And, in a district as large as ours, we have very significant urban areas. I've worked in our urban districts. I've worked in some of our foreign language schools. And I was really attracted to the idea of whole child education because, my background's early childhood, and that's what you do with kids. You teach them how to feel healthy or to be healthy, how to feel safe in school, how to challenge them and engage them in their learning. And as I moved on to older grades and interacted on a leadership level, I saw that what I did with my little guys is just as effective with the older students. They're just big kids or little kids in big bodies, really. And so I was grateful to have these connections with ASCD so I could kind of start spreading the word about whole child, and did some advocacy work up in DC. Haven't quite infiltrated our state capital, but I kind of feel like my role as an educator is to help parents and the community see the importance of looking beyond just academics in our learning, and that we have to help our students just have a great overall day, because none of us function well with little sleep or no food or when we've had a fight with our spouse, and that's the same with our students. And so over these last few years in my leadership roles, and even in that 8-year stint when I was part-time, I really saw the need for helping inform the community and even just people within our schools on the little things you can do to make a difference. Like, you see a kid crying, or he's out of line for some reason, or he's making bad decisions. Well, think about what was that morning like? What happened before he walked in your classroom? Because that has a huge impact on the learning day. And so that's kind of where I focused my professional work over the years. Even, now that I'm full-time and I'm still serving on the board for Florida ASCD, and I've served on some ASCD committees, I've kind of stepped back a little bit so I can focus more on my school-based roles, but I'm still very much involved in that. In fact, just like my connections I've built with Twitter and ed camps and things like that have all come out of that opportunity of my connections with the ASCD Emerging Leader Program. And I feel that it's such a great part of what I do, because I connect with people on a daily basis that I've met from around the world as a result of that program, which I think has helped me become a better advocate for kids and a better leader and learner in my school.
Absolutely. Now, what exactly does it mean to be on the ASCD board?
Well, so I serve on the Florida ASCD board. So okay. ASCD is an international organization, and then they have affiliates and connected communities. The affiliates are state-based, and then the connected communities are around the world. And so, for example, if you join ASCD, you can also join Georgia ASCD or New York ASCD, and then you receive various benefits from your state. So I served on the board of directors for Florida ASCD in several capacities, and so I helped, with revising our constitution and trying to have more outreach for our membership. But the nice thing about the connection to ASCD is the streamlining of the resources, and knowing if we had questions, there were people to help us. If we wanted to go talk to a congressman, ASCD had literature to help, talk about whole child and things like that. So we're kind of like the on-the-ground people, but there's a lot of people that aren't aware that ASCD has state affiliates. And so that's part of the work I'm doing, is to kind of help build that in our states, because it helps when you have that collective voice. And I think that's what sets ASCD apart from some other organizations, is the center of their work is whole child.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Now, I applied this year to be an ASCD Emerging Leader. I didn't make it. But can you tell us a little bit about what that means and what some of the work that you did? I know you said it has changed a little bit and broadened.
Sure.
Yeah, just share a little bit about that.
So the program first started, I think, in like 2004, and there was only a handful of people that were selected. And part of the background that I'm aware of from the inception is ASCD was looking for a way to engage young leaders and learners to become members. When you look at, there's a lot of research and studies out there that show that people aren't joining professional organizations like they used to, because what's the value when you can get so many things online and there's just so many resources out there. And so one way to help keep the organization moving is to engage the young members. So they developed the Emerging Leader Program, and at first it was kind of very bare bones. Okay, yeah, you're a great leader. What are we going to do now? I don't know. What do you want to do? And that's kind of how it started. And I think that they didn't want to kind of pigeonhole anyone into a particular model or mold, because we all lead in different ways and we all come from different experiences. So that was 2004 when it started. When I got there in 2010, our class was kind of like, you know what, we really want to make something of this. So to become an emerging leader, there's an application process, and they ask you, questions about your experience. You have to have been a leader within the first certain many of years of your teaching, and they're looking to see, how you want to build capacity in yourself as a leader, and how you can help other people become better leaders and teachers and learners. So once you're accepted, you kind of have different pathways. Like if you want to get involved with presentations, ASCD can help you find ways to present. If you are an awesome writer and you want to write articles for Ed Leadership or books or some of their different newsletters, then they provide you opportunities to be exposed to that. If you're interested in governance and you'd like to actually have experience leading in the organization, then they connect you with affiliates and then with the state board of directors. So they have lots of different arms. They also have like their online programs. So there's many opportunities. And so after 2010, when I came in, the different cadres seemed to have a little bit more of an idea of what they felt would enrich the organization. And so the emerging leaders kind of drive that direction. This current year, we brought in 50 new emerging leaders. It was one of their largest applicant years, like the numbers that came in and then the numbers that were selected. I think in my year there was like 20 something. So they've had a phenomenal group come through. And backtracking a little bit, there's a conference that happens every July it's called Leader to Leader, and it's invitation only, and it's for those that are leaders of affiliates and then the emerging leaders. And so it's a chance for us to come together and build our leadership capacity. And so we get to meet the emerging leaders and such. And it just is amazing, amazing minds. Like just to know that I'm part of that group is very, very humbling, because these people, and some of them are authors already. Some of them are doing great things in their school districts. And I think that what's really unique about the program is it's not streamlined for one direction. It's just kind of being created as time goes on. And I'm hopeful that as time continues, the group will continue to grow stronger and help change the direction, or not necessarily change the direction of ASCD, but help keep it going and not make it stagnant. Because I know there's several professional organizations that have either combined with others or no longer exist because they just couldn't keep the members. And I really think it's important to engage the younger groups. I mean, I'm in my 20th year. I still feel young, but it gives us a purpose. And so they mentor you through like 2 years of the program, and then give you opportunities and experiences, and then hopefully continue to be part of ASCD, as I have done. I call myself ASCD's #1 fan because I've done so much with them, and I feel like it's my family. And I'm actually a big fan of the Emerging Leader Program, and I'm glad that it's still here. I hope it continues to evolve and continue to bring in great people.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's part of the reason why I applied. I'm going to apply again. I have persistence.
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep trying. So you talked a little bit about this already, but the whole idea of teaching to the whole child. So I'm interested to know your thoughts on how standardized testing has kind of had an effect on a teacher's ability to teach the whole child.
Well, I come from Florida, which is one of those states where standardized testing is, pretty important. We have school grades assigned to our schools, which is kind of demeaning to our teachers, because the formulas that are used to determine those school grades, I don't think they accurately reflect the whole child, as you mentioned. But being an early childhood teacher at heart, the idea of teaching the whole child is just what you do. Like, it surprises me when people don't take time to develop the character of a child. Oh, we just got to get through to this test. And the other piece that kind of ties along with that in our state is the teacher evaluation systems. And I know this is something that's in a lot of states, kind of is held over teachers' heads for their performance. And so in our state, student performance is tied to, or teacher evaluation is tied to student performance. Mm-hmm. And so teachers feel like they really have to teach to this test in order to help themselves do better. But, when you start focusing so much on just reading and math, you're not developing interest, kids get bored. And so finding creative ways to help teachers continue to engage students and give them challenges. And I have a son who's extremely gifted. And school, he loves learning, so that's great, but he gets very bored sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at the whole child, how are you engaging that child to challenge them and reach further? And, like I mentioned before about just noticing the little things. If you want a kid to do, this kind of always cracks me up. So right before testing, or the week of testing, what do we all do? We give the kids an extra snack. We tell the parents make sure they have a healthy breakfast. We give them a little peppermints to chew on while they're taking their test, because all these things are going to help improve their brain. Okay, well, why don't we push that every single day? Mm-hmm. If we're preparing them like that for that one-day test, why aren't we doing that every single school day? And so I think changing that mindset of preparing kids to learn each day makes that focus move more back to the whole child. And then just like that environment of caring that a kid's there. We just get so rushed, bell to bell, in and out, that we forget these are people too, and they need to break too. We as teachers learn to push through. I mean, like today, I think I didn't use the restroom until like 1 o'clock because I just couldn't. Because we had so much, making sure the kids were getting the lunch and everybody arrived, because we're stressing. But that's like what we're putting our kids through every day when we're like, with instruction from minute to minute, no downtime, no deep breaths, and, God forbid you turn the lights off and put their heads down for 5 minutes, So changing that with our teachers, and that comes from our leadership too. It has to be accepted in the whole school. I heard of a school recently where they weren't letting their pre-K kids have nap time. Pre-K kids, those are 40-year-olds. My son slept every day when he came home from kindergarten. He's need that rest. So that's losing that mindset of what's best for children. And I think when you think about what's best for children, you think about the whole child.
Right. So you're in a pre-K to 5 building. What grades is it required that you do testing, state testing?
So our state testing is 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Okay.
And we do have other kinds of assessments that are given to our K-1 and 2 students. And we actually have a state-mandated pre-K assessment as well that they use to kind of just gauge where they are at the end of the year. But, they use that, I need to make sure my kids know their letters. Do they know how to be nice to the little boy next to them and tell him he doesn't like and use his words to solve problems? Like, that to me is a little bit more important than how many letters he knows at the end of pre-K.
Right. Especially when we know kids develop at so many different stages, and that's fine. And it do you see any changes coming Florida's way with the Every Student Succeeds Act, or do you think it's just going to be kind of status quo?
So, from my current knowledge, and I've kind of waited a little bit to really delve deep into the law to see how it's going to actually streamline down to us. But I do know that having that greater sense of control back into the state is going to mean, as long as we still have the current kind of leadership we've had, it's going to continue to mean what we already have. Our last several governors have been very gung-ho on school grading, on providing vouchers for parents so their students can have a school of their choice. In fact, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I believe that a law was passed that will be implemented in the next year or two that kids can go to any public school they want to. Even if you live in Miami and you want to go to school in Orlando, it's kind of going to be open up. So I don't know how they're going to manage that, but they're trying to really push school choice, which we know the effects that has on our public school system and funding for our kiddos. But anyhow, so the past several leaders that we've had have been very gung-ho on vouchers, the school grading system, standardized tests, and then, of course, tying it all to teacher evaluation. So a lot of times that falls along party lines. So depending on who our next governor will be, could maybe change some of that. But traditionally, our state has been very much that direction of driven by assessment.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that, kind of the older I get, the more I pay attention to how political education is. My first couple years, I actually started teaching in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a huge district. I don't know if it's as big as the one that you work in, but I don't know, like I was just kind of like in this bubble in my classroom and didn't really, pay attention to that kind of thing. And now it's just so much more apparent. But anyways, we could spend all day talking about the challenges there. So you've been teaching for 20 years, which is amazing. Bless you. And you're interested in becoming a district leader. I guess I'm just curious why. Like, what inspires you to kind of take that leap into school administration?
So I have watched over the years, and like I mentioned earlier, I've taught in, I think, 9 different schools in our district. I've watched teacher morale drop, and I've watched school cultures shift, more in the mindset of this is what the district says we have to do, just do it, rather than that culture of nurturing and building each other. And it's not to say that every place I've been is like that, but it's kind of a sense that people are feeling in a lot of places, I think, across the country, and most specifically in those places where things are really driven by the standardized assessments. And I feel like we need more leaders that are about building relationships and helping everybody feel valued on campus. As a former kindergarten teacher, I'm a bubbly, vivacious person. I like for people to feel happy and to be in a good mood and to know that they're cared for. And when I see the hustle and bustle of getting through the day and forgetting to say, hey, how are you? What can I do to take something off of your load? I heard your husband was really sick. How's he doing? Just getting to know your staff is really important, and continuing to push hard. Because like my husband, he works in management at Disney. And he talks about how it's just so important to take care of your people. Because if you take care of your people, they're going to work way harder for you. And so it's the same with our teachers. If we take care of our teachers, they're going to overlook a lot of these outside factors that they can't control to do what's best for their students.
So he gets to work at the happiest place on earth.
Yes, he does.
That's awesome.
Yes, yeah. So it's fun to talk leadership with him because he's leading adults, but sometimes adults are very similar to children. So we have good stories to share. But it's fun to kind of bounce off what it looks like in the quote unquote real world of business. And there's definitely a lot of parallels. And he works in a place that's driven by production and numbers. And you don't get better numbers out of people by cracking a whip. You get better numbers out of them by showing that you care about them.
Right.
And that, I think, is in my heart why I chose to go that direction. So, years and years ago, people were like, oh, you should be a principal. And I was like, no way. I have no interest in doing that. Why would I want to be in that role? But as I've gotten older and wiser, I've seen how I can have a greater outreach. For example, when I was in the leadership role for 8 years doing the work with our English language learners, the next 2 years I was back in the classroom. And it was great. I loved it. I loved being with the kids. But I felt like my hands were tied. I felt like there were so many things I wanted to tell leadership or I wanted to see change. But I was in the classroom and I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. So I feel like by being in an assistant principal or district level position, my voice for the teachers can be heard a little bit more. Maybe not. Maybe I'm naive to that whole process. But that's just kind of where I feel like my next step would be. I can reach more people.
Yeah. So in Florida, are those positions few and far between, or do they kind of open up pretty frequently, or does it just depend?
So it depends on your school district. Our school district has a very, very, very long process for becoming eligible to apply to be an assistant principal. So it took me a year to go through the whole process, from applications to interviews to surveys, all kinds of stuff. And that's just to be in this pool.
Wow.
Now, we have over 250 schools in our district. So if you can imagine, probably 180 of those have assistant principals at that. So they need a lot in this area. So it's just getting through that process at first, which is difficult. There are lots of leadership roles in our district because of it being so huge. But, as with any large organization, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to get places. I imagine in a smaller district where you have the opportunity to show your talent, it might be easier to be noticed.
Right.
So that's kind of the challenge that we have here. Now, one thing in our state, we have this retirement program called DROP, and it's something, I don't know the whole ins and outs of it, but you say, okay, 5 years from today, I have to retire. And then you get a certain percentage of money. So they changed the whole system. And so for some reason, this year and the next 4 years, a ridiculous number of people are retiring. So this year, we had 30 principals retire.
Wow.
And I don't even know the number of teachers. And that's going to happen again. So like right now is a good time to be looking for leadership position because there's so many people leaving. And it's almost like an early retirement kind of thing, which I think is kind of unfair to our schools because, number one, you're leaving all these openings that need to be filled. And are you necessarily filling them all with the best quality people? Or did they have another 5 or 10 years that they could really make an impact on the schools? So it's all wonky, the whole system, but it was just some retirement package thing that the state offered, and it's just kind of messing us all up right now.
That's interesting. Now, is DROP, is that an acronym for something, or?
It's something about retirement. I don't remember, because I'd say about 10 years ago, they shifted the system, and I don't do DROP. I do the 403B because I think that makes more sense. But, it's just some money thing.
Just curious because, us in education, we like to make up acronyms.
Those acronyms, yeah, it probably is one.
Random kind of stuff. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the ELL population that you have in Florida. Working in Charlotte Mech, I worked with many students who were ELL. Now in Pennsylvania, at least in the district that I work now, it's very, very small, and we don't have those challenges that you would have with a large ELL population. So just kind of share with the listeners, about those students who are in your district.
Sure. So, as you can imagine, Florida is one of our larger Hispanic population states. However, we have a ridiculous number of other languages. I'm not sure the most current number, but it's like 170 languages are spoken in our school district. A majority of them are Spanish, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese, Portuguese, and I feel like I'm missing one other one. But anyhow, so we actually have offices of people that are available to help support the schools with those students. We had a law, it's called the Meta Consent Decree, and I guess it was back in the 90s this law was passed. It was a result of a lawsuit about unfair treatment or discrimination of students that were learning English. So as a result, we have a very strict compliance procedure for testing, for rules for retention, and all those how you hold meetings, all those kinds of things. So that's great because then we're not overlooking any particular student. Like for example, they cannot be retained in their first 2 years of school because they need time to acquire English. Should be longer, but I didn't make the law. But it is challenging. So here's an example. The current school where I teach now, we only have a handful of students that speak Haitian Creole and Spanish. My last school, we had 200 kids that spoke Spanish. School I was in before, we probably had 15 different languages, like fluent speaking languages in our school. And it's kind of regional, like one side of Orlando is more of the migrant workers. You might have more students from Mexico. We have a very large influx of students from Puerto Rico, and also from Haiti. And so there's pockets in different places, and it's really important to understand their cultures so that you can really help reach out to their families. And here's something that I didn't become aware of it until much later. But even like your Spanish-speaking children, you can't just clump them all together. because the Mexican culture is very different than the Colombian culture.
Right.
The Guatemalan culture is very different than those from Honduras. And you throw them all together, they might have some cultural clashes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to kind of understand where they're coming from so you can better support them. Even like some of our kids that come over from Haiti, you've got some of those kids that they've been here for many years, their families were here. You've got some that were displaced from the earthquake that happened a couple years ago. And so those kids have trauma that they're dealing with. So I can imagine in other parts of the country when you're dealing with like the I can't remember, is it the Syrian refugees that they were trying to bring over? I don't remember exactly. But, there's certain areas around the country where there's a completely different kind of culture that's there. That's really critical in knowing how to help those kids.
But you have whole offices of people who help support teachers and the work that they're doing with those kiddos?
It's mostly on the compliance side, but we do have like a paraprofessional that comes in and helps support. We do have translators available in our district for a certain number of languages. We do have psychologists for maybe 4 or 5 different languages.
Okay.
So there's resources out there. And like when it comes to like purchasing programs and things like that, like we do have a lot of those kinds of resources to help our teachers. And our teachers are required to have certifications or endorsements if they work with our students that speak another language. We have a very long process for teachers. If you don't graduate from a Florida school, you have to go through 2 different routes. One route is 300 hours or 120 hours in a certification exam, and that's for anyone that teaches reading to an ELL student.
Wow.
So, and you have a certain amount of time to go through that process. So they really want to make sure that we're understanding these students. And I actually teach courses online for CaseNext, but they're actually for teachers in Georgia that are working on their endorsements. So I'm heavily involved in that process, and I think it's really critical that teachers really understand not only how they develop language, but their cultures.
Yeah, what was that called? CaseNext?
CaseNext, CaseNex.
Okay.
It's an online professional development company that provides a lot of trainings for different districts and individuals and such.
Okay, that's interesting. So you got to take some time off to spend with your son, you said, but now you're back working. Is that right, your son?
Yeah, I have 2 sons actually, yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. But now you're working, full time again, and you're involved in, it sounds like, many things. So I'm curious, because this podcast is all about women leadership. How do you strike that balance? How do you keep the balance, that you're spending time at home, but also, doing your professional thing without getting overwhelmed and overworked?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. So I'm one of those overly active kinds of people that doesn't sit for long periods of time.
Uh-huh.
I'm tired, so that's why I'm managing sitting, but usually I don't sit all night. I don't watch TV. I don't have time for that. Just go. So actually I did an Ignite a few years ago about my pathway to leadership, and I talked about juggling and balancing a lot of different things. And first and foremost, you have to keep your family at the forefront, what those needs are. 4 o'clock, walk out the door. It's not done. It'll be there tomorrow. It's going to be okay. The world is not going to end. Except for transportation, which is why I didn't leave till 6 o'clock today.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, you said it was 5 o'clock.
But like that, and knowing that some nights I'm going to have to bring work home, but limiting yourself, because if you're not right at home, you can't be right at work. And I think it's important to have a network of people to help support you. I'm very lucky because my mom helps me take care of my kids, and I have a great husband. And so we work together to make sure the kids have what they need. And I think, if you know what your passions are and you can find a way to line them all up together, then that's better. Like, for example, the whole child work with ASCD, that fits perfectly into the advocacy I can do in my school. If I wanted to, and I haven't done this yet, but if I wanted to bring in a PTA group and talk about whole child on another level, I have the resources and the knowledge. It's right there. Boom. When I'm talking to parents about struggles they're having with their students and home and getting them resources, I can kind of line those things up. So, when you have your passions and you can find a way to line them up with your work, then you get more bang for your buck. I'm a big believer in paying a house cleaner and planning meals.
Me too. Wait, I missed that second one. What was the second one?
Meal planning. So I have 4 meals I'm good at making, and I'll make enough for 5 separate dinners, and I'll freeze them. So for example, spaghetti. Okay, I'll go and I'll buy 20 pounds of ground beef, and one Sunday I'll make 5 meals worth of spaghetti or whatever, and I'll stick it in the freezer, and then the night before I'll thaw it out so I can make it. There's some nights when we have sandwiches because we're rushing out the door to go to karate. So that's very helpful. And then they also have those different meal delivery things, which I do a couple of those. I mean, they can get expensive, but if you plan with the right coupons, that helps. But yeah, the house cleaner is definitely the number one important thing, because what do? You spend your entire Saturday cleaning your house, and you don't get to spend with your kids.
Right, exactly.
And then having a designated time, when I know I'm going to have a big crunch, or when I was going to school. Saturday is Daddy's day. He's in charge of the kids, and that's my day to focus on my work, so that when everybody's home, I can focus on them.
Sure.
So you just have to kind of figure out what your balance is, what your system is, but know that you can walk away from your work, because you do have to keep your family at the center.
Yeah, I think it does. I think you make a good point though about aligning your passions, because when they align with your work, it doesn't feel quite like work as much as if you're doing something that you're just not really into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now that my kids are older, I've trained them how to load and empty the dishwasher, fold their own clothes and put them in their drawers, and they have their routine for getting their backpacks and stuff. So, teaching them to be responsible for their own things is helpful.
Absolutely. Can you Skype with my son later and share with him how to do those kinds of things? He's still learning. Yeah. He should know it by now. He's 8. He should know. Yeah. I have a 7-year-old, 10-year-old, and we just really started all this past year. So the younger one got it earlier than the older one did. Oh, okay. So I don't have to feel that bad about myself. I'm not getting there yet. Alina, how can people find you, connect with you after they listen to this podcast? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So I'm on Twitter at Alina Davis. That's a good way to reach me. It's hard to find me on Facebook because I have my maiden name in there too. But I guess probably.
What about that Ignite talk that you said that you did? Is that posted anywhere where people could watch that?
Actually, no. It was never recorded. My very first one ever.
Bum. Okay. Well, you'll have to do one again so we can record it and then.
I have a few pieces of writing I've done that are on the ASCD Edge website. I think it's edge.ascd.org. I don't remember.
Yeah, you should tweet those out again, so then we can retweet and share them.
Yeah. So I've got a few pieces I wrote for a little while, then I stopped, and then I recently wrote a piece about the tragedies that happened in Orlando and how it affected me as a teacher and a parent. That was kind of a sad tearjerker one, but I need to start writing some more. But yeah, Twitter is really the best way. I participate in the Ed Therapy chat on a regular basis, and then the ASCD L2L chat pretty regularly as well. But that's a good way. They can email me as well, alinad@bellsouth.net.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just so you know, Alina, Jeff Prickett and he's a principal out in Illinois, are starting a new admin chat. Our first one is going to be September 6th at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, so that'd be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you, just chatting about, challenges and successes about being a new administrator, but might, be good to get some connections and connect with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good.
So great. So that's at Alina Davis, Alina, and then Davis, Davis. You can connect with her on Twitter. Alina, thank you so much. I know you're tired from a busy day, first day of school. I really appreciate you connecting with me, and I hope you have a good evening.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate being here as well.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in on the Pittsburgh Gal Principal Podcast. I am always excited to connect with women in education. Learn how they are balancing work and home, as well as challenging the status quo about what it means to be a successful woman. My podcast is all about elevating the voices of women, so please share these stories with your friends and your colleagues. Find me on Twitter at eclaire_ahs. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.